The sky above Terrace burned red as another day ended. For the Mirians, each sunset might be their last. Colony leader Ta stood at the broken window of their communications tower, watching the distant movement of Krell beasts at the edge of the forest. These predators had appeared 3 cycles ago, at first just curious shadows among the trees. Now they hunted in packs, their sharp claws and powerful jaws having already claimed dozens of colonist lives. "The outer farm has fallen," said June, entering the room quietly. His normally neat uniform was torn and stained. "We saved most of the food stores, but lost 3 more people." Ta nodded without turning. The colony's population had dropped from 800 to barely 300 in just months, and the shield generators. 2 days of power left. Maybe 3 if we shut down non-essential systems. Tai finally faced his assistant. June had been a scholar before the attacks began. Now he carried a weapon like everyone else, the soft hands of a researcher now calloused and scared. "Then we try one more time." They both looked at the communications array. The aging equipment had been sending automated distress signals across all frequencies for nearly a year. No response had ever come. Most of the colonists had given up hope months ago. The Mirians were alone on this distant planet, abandoned by their homeworld after political changes had deemed their scientific mission unnecessary. "The power we need for one final transmission could extend the shields by several hours," June argued gently. "And then what? A slower death?" Ta shook his head. "I'd rather use our remaining energy to call for help one last time." June didn't argue further. They had been friends too long for that. Instead, he helped Ta prepare the equipment, boosting power to dangerous levels. The machinery hummed and sparked as they worked. Outside, night fell completely. The warning sirens blared as another pack of Krell tested the weakening shields. Defense teams rushed to reinforce the western perimeter. "Ready," Jun said finally, stepping back from the console. Tay took a deep breath and activated the recording device. "This is Colony Terrace sending an emergency distress call. Our position is Sector 7-93, Quadrant Delta. Our shields are failing. Predatory native species have overwhelmed our defenses. Nearly 500 souls lost. We have children among us. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need immediate evacuation assistance. This will be our final transmission." He paused, then added more quietly, "We don't have much time left." With a nod to June, he sent the message. The communications array screamed with the effort, components overheating and smoking. They had pushed it beyond safe limits. As the transmission completed, a loud crack echoed through the room as the main transmitter shattered. "That's it," Jun said. "No more calls for help." Tai stared at the broken equipment. "Now we focus on survival." They left the communications tower and made their way through the colony's main settlement. Fear hung in the air like a fog. People moved quickly between buildings, always watching the perimeter. Children no longer played outside. The formerly vibrant research outpost had become a prison. In the central meeting hall, colony members gathered for the evening meal, rations growing smaller each day. Tai addressed them with forced optimism, not mentioning the failed communications array. Hope was as essential as food now. Later that night, as most colonists sought restless sleep, Tai sat alone in his quarters reviewing defense plans that seemed increasingly futile. The Krell were learning, adapting to Mirian tactics. Each attack grew more coordinated. A small knock at his door revealed young Min, one of the colony's children. "Can't sleep?" Tai asked, setting aside his work. Min shook his head. "Will someone come help us?" Ta hesitated. He had always taught the children not to lie. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we must believe it's possible." After Min left, Ta stepped outside and looked up at the stars. Their final message was racing through space, probably to be lost forever in the vast emptiness. What Tai couldn't know was that at that exact moment, at the edge of the system, a small human monitoring station picked up an unusual signal. Lieutenant Kim, halfway through her boring night shift, suddenly sat up straight as her console lit up with an incoming transmission. "This is strange," she muttered, adjusting her equipment. The message was fragmented, the language unfamiliar, but the universal distress pattern was unmistakable. Kim hesitated only briefly before sending an alert to Earth Command. Within hours, Captain Park of the warship Stormfront would be reviewing the strange message from an unknown species. Help, against all odds, was coming. The conference room aboard the warship Stormfront fell silent as the distress message played for the third time. Captain Park stood with her hands behind her back, face calm but eyes intense. Around the table sat her senior crew: Navigator Sung, Security Chief Han, Medical Officer Lee, and Engineering Lead Jin. The static-filled voice of an unknown being echoed through the room once more before Park switched off the recording. "Earth Command has verified this is not a human transmission," Park said. "The signal originated from Sector 7-93, nearly 6 light-years beyond our farthest colony. So we're talking about first contact with an alien species," Lee said, leaning forward. "A species in danger." Han frowned. "Or it could be a trap. We have no way to verify their claims." "The universal distress pattern is unmistakable," Park replied. "And our linguists confirm the emotional markers in the voice indicate genuine fear." Engineer Jin tapped at his tablet, projecting a route map onto the wall screen. "At maximum safe speed, we'd reach them in 12 days. "That's too long," Park said. "You heard the message. Their shields are failing. They have children." Navigator Sung cleared his throat. "There is another option." All eyes turned to him. "The new FTL drive modifications. They're not approved for field use yet, but my calculations suggest we could cut the journey to under 3 days. "Those modifications haven't completed safety testing," Jin objected. "The risk of drive failure would be significant." Park walked to the window, looking out at the stars. For a moment, she thought of her own family, her own children back on Earth. What would she want someone to do if they were in danger? "How significant?" she asked without turning. Jin hesitated. 28% chance of catastrophic drive failure. The room fell silent again. Park faced her crew. "Humanity has a long history of helping those in need, regardless of risk. We've saved strangers from burning buildings, from sinking ships, from disaster zones. We've never asked if they were like us first." "This is a bit different than running into a burning building, Captain," Han said. "Is it?" Park asked. "Because I see the same choice. People who need help, and our ability to provide it." She straightened her uniform. "I've made my decision. We're going, and we're using the modified drive." The meeting ended with quick orders. As the senior staff left to prepare their departments, Navigator Sung remained behind. "Captain, may I speak freely?" he asked. "Always, Sung. The odds of us arriving in time, even with the modified drive, they're not good. And if we burn out the drive getting there, we could be stranded." Park nodded. "I understand the math. But sometimes, Sung, the attempt matters as much as the outcome." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Plot the course. Make it happen." Throughout the massive ship, announcements alerted the crew to prepare for emergency acceleration. In the engine room, Jin and his team worked frantically to implement the experimental modifications. The ship's regular rhythm changed to one of urgent purpose. In her private quarters, Park recorded a message for her family, just in case the worst happened. Then she tucked the small photo of her children back into her uniform pocket and returned to the bridge. "All departments report ready, Captain," Han announced as Park took her command chair. "Shields at maximum," called an officer. "Medical bay prepared for potential casualties," came Lee's voice over the comm. "Engineering reports FTL modifications complete," Jin added, his voice tight with stress. Park nodded. "Navigator Sung, is our course plotted?" "Yes, Captain. Direct route to Sector 7-93. "Very well." Park took a deep breath. Engage FTL drive at modify capacity. The massive engines at the rear of the Stormfront hummed to life, the sound rising to a pitch the crew had never heard before. The stars outside began to stretch as the fabric of space itself bent to the ship's will. Warning lights flashed across control panels. The ship shuddered violently. "Hull temperature rising," shouted an officer. "Stabilizers struggling to compensate," yelled another. "Stay the course," Park ordered calmly. The vibrations increased. In engineering, cooling systems worked beyond their designed limits. Jin's face was illuminated by red warning lights as he manually adjusted power distribution. Then suddenly, the shaking stopped. The ship surged forward, faster than any human vessel had ever traveled before. "FTL stable," Sung reported with obvious relief. "Current speed exceeding projections by 12%. Estimated arrival in 65 hours. A cheer went up across the bridge. Park allowed herself a small smile before quieting them. "The journey has just begun," she reminded them. "We don't know what we'll find when we arrive, or who we'll be saving. But I do know this: today, humanity reaches beyond its borders not to conquer or explore, but simply to help." As the Stormfront raced through space, the message from Terrace continued to play in Park's mind. Somewhere ahead, strangers waited, unaware that salvation was coming like a storm. The last wall of Colony Terrace shook as another pack of Krell slammed against it. Dust fell from the ceiling of the underground shelter where the remaining Myrians huddled together. Only 3 days had passed since their final transmission, but already their situation had become desperate. "The east barrier is down," Jun reported, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. His once clean uniform hung in tatters. "We've moved everyone we could to this central bunker." Ta nodded grimly. Of their original 300 survivors, barely 200 remained. The children sat in tight groups, the youngest ones crying softly while the older ones tried to comfort them with stories of their homeworld. "How long will the shields on this shelter hold?" Tai asked. 6 hours, maybe less. Jum didn't bother hiding the defeat in his voice. Outside, the howls of the Krell grew louder. These creatures hunted not just for food but seemed to take pleasure in the kill. The Myrians had tried to understand them, to communicate with them, but the Krell wanted only one thing: to destroy. "We should arm everyone who can hold a weapon," suggested Hana, their security leader. Her arm was in a makeshift sling, broken during yesterday's attack. "We can make a final stand when they break through." Tad looked at the frightened faces around him. Scientists, farmers, teachers, not warriors. Yet they would fight when the time came. They would have no choice. "Prepare the weapons," he agreed. "But save the last charges for..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Everyone understood. Some fates were worse than death. A loud boom shook the shelter, stronger than before. The lights flickered. "They found a weak point," Hannah said, grabbing her blaster with her good arm. Another boom, and then another. The pattern was wrong for Krell attacks. These sounds came from above, not from the walls. "What is that?" Jun whispered. The shelter's old communication system crackled to life unexpectedly. Most had forgotten it was even there. A voice came through, speaking words no one understood. Then the ground shook with a massive impact that felt different from the Krell attacks. It was followed by another and another. The ceiling creaked under the strain. "They're going to bring the whole shelter down on us," someone cried. But Tai noticed something strange. The howls of the Krell had changed from hunting cries to sounds of pain and fear. The pounding against the shelter walls had stopped. "Something's happening up there," he said. Hannah checked the security feed on her tablet, but the remaining cameras showed only smoke and flashes of light. "Whatever it is, it's driving the Krell back." Minutes passed with the strange booming continuing. Then, suddenly, silence fell. The communication system crackled again, this time with a different voice. "Attention colony inhabitants. Please remain in your shelter. Area is being secured. Help has arrived." The words were in their language. though spoken with an odd accent. The Mirians looked at each other in confusion and disbelief. It could be a trick, Hana warned. Before anyone could argue, the shelter's outer door, which had been sealed for days, began to open. Everyone backed away. Those with weapons raised them with shaking hands. Light flooded in, temporarily blinding them. When their vision cleared, they saw figures in the doorway, figures standing on two legs like themselves, but different in shape and size. One of these beings stepped forward, removing the helmet to reveal a face with features similar to but distinct from their own. This being's skin was darker, its eyes rounder, its frame more solid than the slender Mirians. "I am Captain Park of the Earth ship Stormfront," the being said, speaking slowly. A small device at their throat seemed to translate the words. "We received your distress call and have cleared the immediate area of hostiles." No one moved. The concept seemed impossible to grasp. Help. From beyond the stars, a small Mirian child, braver than the adults, stepped forward. "Are you angels?" the child asked. The human captain knelt down, bringing herself to the child's eye level. "No, little one. We're humans. We came because you needed help." Tai finally found his voice. "How?" "We sent our message only 3 days ago. The nearest system is." "We pushed our ship beyond safe limits," Park explained simply. "We couldn't let you face this alone." More humans appeared at the doorway, some carrying medical equipment, others with weapons and supplies. They moved with purpose but without threat. "The creatures, the Krell. They'll be back," Jun warned. Captain Park nodded. "We know. We've established a perimeter and have troops securing the colony grounds. But we need to move your people to safety." For the first time in months, Tai felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. He stepped forward and extended his hand in the formal Mirian greeting of respect. To his surprise, Captain Park reached out and grasped his hand in return, a gesture unknown to his people, but somehow instantly understood. "Thank you," Ta said, his voice breaking. "We thought we were alone." "Not anymore," Captain Park replied. Above them, the sounds of more human ships arriving filled the air like distant thunder. The storm had arrived, and with it, salvation. The medical bay aboard the Stormfront hummed with activity as human doctors treated injured Mirians. Dr. Lee moved carefully between beds, her movements gentle despite her exhaustion. She had been working for 18 hours straight since the rescue began. "Their biology is remarkably similar to ours," she explained to Captain Park, who had come to check on the survivors. "Different enough to be clearly alien, but similar enough that our basic treatments are effective." Park nodded, watching as a young Mirian child received treatment for a deep gash on her arm. The child stared at the human doctor with wide, curious eyes rather than fear. "How many will recover?" Park asked quietly. "Most of them. We lost 3 who were too badly injured before we arrived, but the rest should pull through." In another section of the ship, Tai sat across from Park in a small conference room. Between them lay simple food items from both species, a gesture of trust that both understood. Ta cautiously sampled a piece of fruit from Earth, while Park tried a Mirian bread-like staple. "Your translation devices work well," Tay remarked. "Our scientists would have loved to study them." His voice carried a note of sadness when he spoke of his lost colleagues. "There will be time for scientific exchange," Park assured him. "But first, tell me more about these Krell creatures." Tay's expression darkened. "They appeared 3 cycles ago. At first, just a few, watching from the forest edge. We thought they were simply curious local wildlife." He paused, collecting himself. "Then they attacked our outer research station. 22 people gone in one night. They've grown bolder and more organized with each attack." "Organized? You believe they're intelligent?" "Not like us. Not civilized. But yes, intelligent. They learn. They adapt. Each attack showed new tactics." Ta looked up. "Your weapons stopped them, but they'll be back. They always come back stronger. Outside the conference room window, they could see the colony below. Human soldiers worked alongside Mirians to strengthen defenses. New energy barriers were being installed, powered by the Stormfront's generators. My security chief tells me the Krell retreated to the northern mountains, Park said. We've set up sensor grids to track their movements. Your technology is. Ta searched for the right word. Impressive. We were once a spacefaring people too, but our colony was abandoned by our homeworld after political changes. Our equipment is generations old. Park nodded sympathetically. Humanity has had its share of political troubles too, but we've learned some hard lessons about abandoning our own. Their conversation was interrupted when June entered with Security Chief Han. Both looked concerned. The sensors have detected movement, Han reported. Large groups of Krell gathering at the mountain passes. They're organizing for another attack. How many? Asked Park. More than we've ever seen, June said, his voice tight. They must have called others from distant territories. Park stood. Then we prepare. Chief Han, coordinate with the Mirian security forces. I want combined human Mirian teams at each defensive position. As the officers left to carry out orders, Tay remained seated, studying Park with new interest. You could leave, he said finally. Take your ship, take us with you. Why stay and fight? Park considered the question. Partly because retreat doesn't solve the problem. These Krell would still be here, threatening any future settlements. But mostly, she paused, finding the right words, mostly because this is what humanity does. We help. Later, as dusk fell over the colony, a remarkable scene unfolded. Human soldiers showed Mirian defenders how to use Earth weapons. Mirian scouts explained Krell behavior patterns to human officers. Children from both species, despite having no common language beyond simple translated phrases, played together in the central plaza under watchful eyes. In the colony's former communications center, now converted to a command post, Park and Tai finalized their defense plans. Your people learn quickly, Park commented, watching a Mirian easily handle a human scanner. As do yours, Tai replied, nodding toward a human soldier who had adopted a Mirian fighting stance. Perhaps we are not so different. Different enough to be interesting. Similar enough to be friends, Park said with a smile. Their conversation was cut short by an alert from the sensor grid. On the main screen, hundreds of red dots moved down from the mountains toward the colony. They're coming, Ta said, his voice steady now where fear would have been days earlier. Sooner than we expected. Park didn't flinch. She activated her communication device. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. As alarms sounded throughout the colony, humans and Mirians moved with purpose to their assigned stations. Where once there had been despair, now determination filled the air. I never thought I would see my people brave again, Ta said quietly. Courage is contagious, Park replied. She checked her weapon and nodded to Ta. Let's show these Krell what happens when they face our species fighting together. Outside, the first howls of the approaching Krell echoed through the evening air. The battle for Colony Terrace was about to begin. The morning sky turned dark as thousands of Krell descended from the mountains. They moved like a black wave across the landscape, more numerous than any previous attack. From the colony's new defense tower, Captain Park watched through binoculars as the creatures approached. I've never seen so many, Ta said, standing beside her. They must have called every pack within hundreds of miles. Park lowered her binoculars. They're learning. They recognize the threat we pose. She activated her communications device. All units, prepare for engagement. Remember your training. Wait for my signal. The defensive perimeter around Colony Terrace had been transformed in just 2 days. Human energy shields now protected key areas. Weapons emplacements staffed by both species lined the walls. Medical teams waited in protected zones, ready to treat casualties. They're approaching the outer sensor line, reported Han over the communication system. 300 meters and closing. Park turned to Ta. Your people ready? He nodded. We may not be warriors by nature, but we'll fight for our home. That's all anyone can ask. Park raised her hand, then dropped it decisively. All units, engage. The first line of defense activated. Hidden mines that exploded among the front ranks of Krell. Creatures fell by the dozens, but the others simply leaped over their fallen packmates, barely slowing. They're not retreating, June observed from his station at the sensor controls. Previous attacks, they would pull back after first casualties to regroup. These aren't normal animals, Han said grimly. They want revenge. The Krell hit the second defensive line, automated turrets that fired precision shots into the advancing horde. Again, many fell. Again, the rest pressed forward. Third line, prepare, Park ordered. This would be the first direct combat. Human and Marian defenders raised their weapons as the Krell approached the walls. The creatures stood nearly as tall as humans when on their hind legs, with thick scales covering their bodies and razor claws extending from 6 limbs. Fire, Park commanded. Energy weapons and projectiles tore into the Krell ranks. The defenders had been trained well, taking careful aim rather than firing wildly. Each shot found its target. The front line of attackers collapsed. For a moment, it seemed the defense might hold. Then, at the back of the Krell forces, something moved. A massive shape, nearly twice the size of the others. "What is that?" Park asked sharply. Tay's face drained of color. "We've never seen one that big. It must be a leader," Han finished. "They have a command structure." The giant Krell roared, and the attack pattern instantly changed. Instead of rushing forward in a mass, the creatures split into smaller groups, targeting different sections of the wall. "They're flanking us," Han shouted. "Eastern section, reinforce." Park grabbed her rifle. "I'm heading to the east wall. Tay, stay here and coordinate with June." Before he could object, she was running down the tower stairs, calling for a squad to follow her. The east wall was the colony's traditional weak point, with older foundations that hadn't been fully reinforced. She arrived to find the situation deteriorating rapidly. The Krell were piling against the wall, literally climbing over each other to reach the top. Defenders fired downward, but for each creature that fell, 2 more took its place. "Fall back to the secondary position," Park ordered as the first Krell crested the wall. The defenders retreated in good order to a prepared position 20 meters back. From there, they could create a crossfire against anything breaching the wall. The first Krell leaped down inside the colony perimeter, only to be cut down immediately. But more followed. Soon a dozen were inside, then 20. "Hold the line," Park shouted, firing steadily. Her shots found their marks. But there were simply too many enemies. A massive explosion suddenly rocked the north wall. Through her earpiece, Park heard Han's voice, tight with stress. "They've breached the north section. Some kind of coordinated charge." The battle was now on 2 fronts. Park made a quick decision. "Squad 2 and 3, reinforce the north. Squad 1, with me. We hold here." As her troops adjusted, a shadow fell over Park. She looked up to see a Krell, larger than the others, lunging directly at her. She fired, but the creature's momentum carried it forward. Sharp claws slashed toward her face. From nowhere, Tay appeared, slamming his body into the Krell. They tumbled to the ground together, the creature's claws raking across Tay's chest instead of Park's throat. Park didn't hesitate. 3 precise shots, and the Krell lay still. She rushed to Tay's side. "I ordered you to stay in the tower," she said, quickly examining his wounds. "You humans aren't the only ones who help others," he replied through gritted teeth. Park called for a medic, then returned to the battle. The situation had reached a critical point. The giant Krell leader was now directing attacks against both breaches, expanding them methodically. "We need a new strategy," Han said over the comm. "We can't hold both sections." Park looked at the command tablet showing the colony layout. "We don't have to." She quickly outlined a new plan. a tactical retreat to draw the Krell into the central plaza where hidden heavy weapons waited. As the defenders pulled back in careful stages, the Krell followed, sensing victory. The massive leader entered the colony, roaring triumphantly. "Now," Park commanded when the trap was full. From concealed positions, heavy repeating energy weapons opened fire from all sides. The tightly packed Krell had nowhere to hide. The giant leader fought the longest, absorbing dozens of hits before finally falling. When silence finally fell, Park surveyed the battlefield. There were casualties on both sides, but the colony still stood. More importantly, not a single Krell had escaped to report back to others of their kind. "It's over," she said to Tai, who had returned to her side despite his bandaged wounds. "For now," he agreed, "but thanks to you, we'll be ready next time." As the sun broke through the clouds above, Human and Miriam worked side by side, tending to the wounded and repairing their defenses. The storm had broken, and they had weathered it together. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.